Hello everyone, Rachel Marie. I know it's been a long time since I made a video, and I actually had agreed to do this every week, and I think it's been like at least 3 months since I made the first video, so I apologize for that absence. But what's occurred in that time is some incredible shifts for me. And I think for humanity as a whole as well, although maybe not all of us are aware of that. So some changes have happened that have led me to reapproach making these videos. And I'm going to start by sharing with you some of the experiences that I'm going through. And first I'm going to say the reason that I'm making these videos is that, as many of you know, at least I think the kind of people who watch this video, humanity is going through an enormous change. We're being called to raise our vibrations, to live from the heart, from love. And there are enormous changes going on in our planetary consciousness because of this need and because of the impending transformational changes to the planet itself. And to those of you who have no idea what I'm talking about, I suggest that you watch some Gaia TV. Maybe look into David Wilcock. Read some channeled works. Like I finally read The Law of One. I've had this book for 2 years. And I was guided to buy it by my Heavens team, by my spiritual team. And actually, no, I'm sorry. I was guided to buy this book, and a friend of mine gave me this one about a week ago. And that was the sign to me, oh, it's time for me to read this, because I'm one of those people that I won't read things out of order. If there's a book 1, I'm going to read that before I read book 2. Even if the divine itself says, Rachel, buy book 2, I'm still compelled to read book 1. So I had book 2 for 2 years, and then I met a friend who, her name is Amanda Pinkerman. She's on YouTube under Pinklight 999, I believe it is. I'll post links to her information. She's amazing. You should go and watch her videos. But she has insisted that I take the copy of book 1, and I read it, and it created an enormous energy shift for me upwards. And so it's changed how I think my interface with the rest of the world is going to go in terms of the service that I'm guided to provide, that my Heavens team wants me to provide, that God, the divine, wants me to provide to humanity, which is, at this point, I think, just to being open about the experiences that I'm going through in this endeavor towards ascension, towards becoming beings of light and love on a planetary level, which I take very, very seriously. So the experience that I'm guided to talk to you about now, that I'm having, is that my vibration has lifted enormously in the past few months. And it's caused such a shift that I'm actually at times I'm a little out of my depth. I get up and I'm like, everything feels different. I feel different. The world feels different. I'm not really sure if I'm standing on solid ground anymore. But predominantly that's a very positive feeling, because I've released so much. There are, however, many things I have not released, and they're manifesting physically. So my vibration has gone up so much higher that there are certain things that no longer want to reside in my body, in my energy field, in my psyche. They are not a match for where I am spiritually anymore. And I don't know if you can hear the congestion. I've had this congestion for 2.5 months almost. And I don't show any signs of infection. It's just this continuous congestion that I can't get to go away. And I won't take antibiotics because I spent so much time rebuilding my body, my gut flora and everything, getting healthy, that taking antibiotics is just not an option. I'm not going to do that to my body. But I've done so much other stuff, and it's just not, it's not having an effect. And so I went to my spiritual team, and I'm like, what's happening? And they're like, well, you have all this stuff you need to release, and we've told you that you need to release it. A lot of it is anger, or was anger, but specifically in the form of thoughts, right? Thoughts that I'm not expressing. They're in my head. They're knocking around in there. They're angry thoughts. They're frustrated thoughts. They're unhappy thoughts. They're fearful thoughts. And I'm not letting them out. I'm not expressing them in a healthy way. And I have passed the point at which it's acceptable for me to live in that pattern. So what's happening is they're creating physical, they're manifesting, and I'm having other symptoms as well. Skin congestion, skin eruptions, aches and pains that don't seem to have any direct cause, but primarily right now it's this congestion. So I've asked the divine, I've asked my heavens team, what's going on? And they told me about the anger. Okay, so I did some work, some spiritual work, with Amanda, who I mentioned, and was able to address that anger, to move the energy in a healthy way, and subsequently to release a great deal of it. And so the congestion improved, but it didn't go away. So again, I go to the divine, I go to my heavens team. What's happening? And pop in comes a divine being who many of you have heard of, I'm sure, Guan Yin. And Guan Yin says, Rachel, she shows me an image of me holding a fish, okay, by the tail, like this, from underneath, in the water, my hand in the water, holding the fish's tail, like really holding it so that the fish can't swim away. And it's trying to get away. It's going like this. And I'm holding its tail and I won't let it swim away. She said, you have to release the fish. And I'm like, okay, right? I'm used to getting messages in image form, and I know that the meaning will eventually come clear. So I say, what happens if I release the fish? Let me see. I actually wrote this conversation down because it was so important. So I said, why? She said, you must let it swim freely. I'm like, okay, so what's the fish? And she says, immediately, your consciousness. I'm going, okay. And by consciousness, I immediately understood, just through direct knowing, that what she meant more directly was my thoughts. She said, let it go where it will. By this transfer of power, you free yourself from illusion. And my reaction to that, as someone who has made a conscious decision to be a high vibrational being in a third dimensional reality, is I can't let my thoughts go wherever they want. They'll go someplace negative. And then that feeds the negative spiral, right? I go into a negative spiral and I lower my vibrations. And so I'm kind of like, I'm in this weird place where I'm questioning, is this really Guan Yin that I'm talking to? Is she guiding me to do something that'll actually lower my vibration? What's happening? And then I start getting reassurance trust, trust your gift, trust yourself, trust the divine. So I say, where is the power now held? Right? Because she talks about this transfer of power. And I'm like, well, where's the power now? She's going, the self. Well, what does that mean? the self? So I get some more direct knowing. Releasing the fish represents the transfer of power from the conscious self to, and then Guan Yin comes in and says specifically, the higher self. That uses those 3 words. And I was like, oh, ding. Okay, I get it. So what's happening is I was stuck in this pattern of negative thinking. And the negative thinking that I was having was that my thoughts were predominantly negative. And that I had to therefore keep a tight control on my thoughts in order to prevent negative thoughts from happening. And this was just locking me down. And it was locking me down so hard that it's actually causing physical congestion. So she goes on with this reassurance, says it's not okay for you to be in fear of your own thoughts, to maintain an energy of fear of your own thoughts. And I was like, well, okay, that makes sense. And then she goes on to say, your thoughts are your own. Use them to explore your universe. Do not allow yourself to be abused by them. Now I have a sort of visceral reaction to the divine using negative language. So I'm going to acknowledge here that that's my translation of her message. That's the best way that my brain could understand it. But the divine, in my experience, does not generally use negative terms, as in don't do something, don't think something. So if I had translated that better, it probably would have come through in positive terms. But the message itself is essentially positive. So they go on to really offer me some more, like my whole team came through to offer me some more assurances, that they understand the struggle that I'm experiencing, and that this fear of my thoughts is something that I really don't have to give into. So I visualized letting go of the fish, and I had a very interesting experience because the fish went wild. It did not do anything what I expected it to do, though. So I expected it to immediately go to darkness, right? So I let go of the fish, whoop, it turns around and it's looking right at me. And I'm like, okay, right? This is a third eye image. I'm directly experiencing my thoughts as a thought form. And okay, what do my thoughts want to do? Where do they want to go? So I just look at the fish and I'm like, what do you want to do? And it just shoots straight up into the sky, and like 1,000,000 miles an hour. And I'm like, oh, okay, where are we going? So I follow on a spiritual level. I'm not going to say exactly where we ended up. It was not where I was expecting. We ended up with some basically what it was an experience of astral projection in my perception. And I ended up in a room with some beings who were not expecting me to be there. And I had a very fearful reaction to that. And so I grabbed hold of the fish again, psychically. And the fish got very upset with me for doing that. My thoughts got very upset with me, energetically for then clamping back down on them. So I let them go again, and then they went all crazy, right? Went all crazy, flying all over the place. They completely out of order. And I'm following, going, okay, well, I'm just going to let this happen. And finally, I reach out to the fish. We're flying over the ocean, and I can see the coast to the left. And it's the California coast. That's where I am. And it's blue skies, the ocean's beautiful, and I'm thinking, man, I really pissed this part of myself off. So I reach up and I pet the fish very gently. It's silver at this point. It's a very metallic silver fish. And it's actually like a little carp. So I reach out and I just pet the fish, and I'm like, I'm sorry. I really upset you. I'm sorry. And immediately the fish slows down, stops freaking out. And I'm like, oh, that's nice. And I keep petting it, and it starts to grow. And it gets bigger and bigger. And the bigger it gets, the slower it's moving. The more relaxed I am, the more relaxed it is. Until it's this enormous carp. Kind of like a golden carp, right? And I wasn't real focused on what the color was at that point. It had been that metallic silver color. But I get specifically that the species of fish that this thought manifestation was a golden carp. And I'm laying on its back, and it's just swimming in this incredibly peaceful, meandering motion, just like a big fish will, just back and forth, gently, gently, gently. And I'm laying on its back, and it's like the most, I'm like, this is so great. Oh, this feels good. And so this fish manifested in this image and gave me this experience to show me that by trying so hard to control my thoughts, I was actually making them do this and lowering my vibration by doing that. And that if I stopped trying so hard to prevent them from going someplace dark, out of fear, I would find that my thoughts are actually primarily very peaceful. And I was really underestimating myself in a grand sense, thinking that my thoughts would just be so dark and so negative that I had to control them with this iron grip. And in fact, by releasing them, I achieved a state of psychic, mental peace and relaxation that I never really had experienced before. Yeah. So that's my message that I'm sharing today. And I'm going to do a lot more of these videos now. I actually mean that. I really hope that my experience touched at least one person out there, and maybe you learned something from it. Maybe it was helpful to you. I love you all. Have a good one.